Hey YouTube fam, welcome to the Average Guy DIY. And today in this video, I want to take you through step by step on how me and my father built a garage from scratch. So stay tuned. So the very first thing we had to do is find a good spot for the garage. We had an old shed behind the house that was slowly sinking into the ground, so it needed to be moved anyway, and placed on a foundation on the other side of the yard. We then started calling around to contractors to find out what would be the best price to move the shed from one end of the yard to the other end of the yard and possibly lay gravel. We found a guy that would actually attempt to do both for about $900. After the shed was successfully moved and the gravel was laid, I used a free design program called Google SketchUp. Now, my version of the program is a lot older than what's now available, but it is still a free program that you can use online. It's always good to get an idea of what the structure would look like before you build it. Our next step was to lay the concrete 20 by 24 foot foundation, which I knew I couldn't do by myself. The cheapest quote I got was about $4,000, which was way out of my budget. So I thought to myself, there must be a cheaper way. And there was. As long as you don't need a perfect, beautiful concrete finish, I found that I could get the job done for about a quarter of the price. So I called a local construction team, and we used a laser level, and we troweled all the concrete by hand, old school. It was a lot of work, but it ended up costing me only $1,000. Now, because it was my first garage I have ever built, when I was framing up the concrete slab, I didn't take into consideration the weight of the concrete. So the concrete actually bowed on all four corners. To avoid this, make sure when you're framing your concrete slab that it is extremely strong to handle the weight. Because of this, I had to cut all four corners into a perfect straight line before I could begin framing. Next, I rented a hammer drill from Home Depot to place my anchor bolts. If you don't know how to place your anchor bolts properly, just take the extra time to YouTube it like I did. There are tons of videos out there to show you how to do it properly. My local Kent store gave me advice on which anchor bolts to use for the code in my area. Finally, the fun could begin. I framed and lifted one wall at a time into place, measuring 16 inches on center from stud to stud. If you don't know how to do this, there's tons of YouTube videos out there, really good ones, that can show you how to do this measurement properly. I also continued to check the plumb of each wall so that the end result was straight. We continued to frame until all four sides were finished, and then nailed the plywood up right away, just to strengthen the structure. All again while continually checking the plumb, so that when we put the roof on, everything will be perfectly square. While framing, I made sure to put in 2x4 spacers, just to keep everything straight and rigid. I did them at 4 feet and 6 feet. We then wrapped the structure in Tyvek and installed all the hurricane brackets, so that when it came time to install the trusses, it would be much easier. We also tied a string across the top, the back, and the front, so that we could make sure when we put the truss up to get it as close to center as possible and make sure all the trusses were in the same place. We placed stringers across the top of all the trusses on each end so that we could plumb the trusses individually and on center. Next, we installed the roof sheathing right away, making sure to use the brackets that were provided, allowing for expansion and contraction of the wood. Finally, things started to get pretty easy from here. We finished sheathing the roof, and then we started to install the tar paper.
After that, it's pretty simple. You just do your doors, your windows, front and back. Make sure to jam them out nicely. Then you have to do your garage door. We did the eaves, the fascia, the shingles, and then you're just on to siding, pretty much downhill. And that's basically how we built our garage. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy the rest of the film.